Good evening. I'd like to call to order the February 16th, 2022 regular council meeting to order at 6 o'clock. And I'm looking for a motion to recess the regular meeting so that we can begin the public hearing. Councillor Langmaid?
I move to recess the meeting.
Thank you. We have a motion from Councillor Langmaid to recess the regular council meeting at 6:01 p.m. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. I'd like to declare the public hearing for the Legacy Farm Area Structure Plan Bylaw number 21-21 open at 6:01 p.m. And at this time, I'm looking for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Councillor Peterson, thank you. Sorry.
Your Worship, I would adopt the agenda of the public hearing as amended.
Oh, did we amend it?
Sorry, as presented. Sorry, Ms. Sturgeon.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor to confirm the agenda. All in favor? And that motion is carried. We have no tabled reports or additional or supplementary reports. And we move now on to land use items 4.1, the Legacy Farm Area Structure Plan, Bylaw number 21-21. This public hearing is held pursuant to the Municipal Government Act RSA 2000, Chapter M-26, and amendments thereto. Legislative Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of Bylaw 21-21 is to approve the Legacy Farm Area Structure Plan. First reading of the bylaw was given on January 12, 2022. The public hearing was advertised January 26, 2022 on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and the Town of Strathmore website. January 28, 2022 in the Strathmore Times. February 1st, 2022 on Facebook. February 4th, 2022 in the Strathmore Times. February 8th, 2022 on Facebook. Letters were circulated to 23 adjacent properties by regular mail on January 18th, 2022. To date, 4 letters of submission have been received. These letters were published with the public hearing agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. The following rules of conduct will be followed during the public hearing. Presentation should be brief and to the point and shall be limited to 3 minutes in length. The order of presentation shall be the administration, those in favor of the bylaw, those opposed to the bylaw, any other person deemed to be affected by the bylaw. Council may ask questions of the speakers after each presentation for clarification purposes, and there will be no debating the bylaw. To date, 4 letters of submission have been received from the following: Dean Kleiber, Community Futures Wild Rose, Tom Sadler, and the Strathmore Wheatland Chamber of Commerce. We are looking for a motion to look at waiving section 146A of Council Procedure Bylaw 16-18, allowing speakers to speak for more than 3 minutes. So that would be a motion I'd be looking to get from one of the councillors at this time. Deputy Mayor Montgomery, thank you. Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor to waive section 146A of Council Procedure Bylaw 16-18. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Does the administration have any comments?
We have a presentation, Your Worship, if you'll allow me to give it.
Thank you, Megan, and good evening, Megan, and welcome tonight.
Good evening, thank you. Just bear with me while I share my screen. Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm Megan Williams, Planner 3 for the Town of Strathmore. We've prepared a brief presentation to accompany the report included in Council's package for the public hearing of Bylaw 21-21, Legacy Farm Area Structure Plan. Oops. So staff received an application in the summer of 2021 for a new area structure plan that affects 48 hectares of land in the southeast of town. The proposed development for the site includes an agritourism hub focusing on Canadian Pacific Rail's demonstration farm, which was constructed in the early 1900s. The rest of the site is proposed to be a mix of complementary uses, including an RV resort, commercial businesses, institutional uses, and agricultural businesses. The policies within the ASP guide a breadth of topics from infrastructure to trails and environment to architectural controls and land uses. Staff has reviewed these policies for longevity and ease of application and is satisfied that the ASP's policies are enforceable. Staff's review of the relevant statutory documents confirmed that the Legacy Farm ASP and the accompanying reports align with all relevant policies, objectives, and guidelines. Public sentiment around the ASP has been very positive. The What We Heard report was completed by the applicant and was attached to the RFD for Council's review. Staff received 4 letters to the circulation phase, 3 in support of the ASP and 1 with a number of clarification questions. Staff answered these questions and include the correspondence in Council's package. There are a few amendments to the ASP. Maps 3, 5, and 10 are proposed to be deleted and replaced. I've got on the screen here map 3. The reason that they're asking for these maps to be replaced is just to include the setback for the recycling facility, which was missed in the original maps for all 3 of them. So this is map 3, this is map 5, and this is map 10. So the proposed amendment also includes a set of CMRB maps, the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board, as an appendix. This series of maps are required to be included in all amended or new ASPs by the Interim Regional Evaluation Framework. The Legacy Farms ASP policies definitively guide development within the plan area. The intent of the plan will not be lost regardless of the time that passes before the final phase. In staff's opinion, the ASP proposes an attractive, unique, and sustainable development that will generate employment opportunities for the community and create a fun and attractive regional tourism destination for residents and visitors alike. Staff is recommending that Council take into consideration all information received at the public hearing this evening. That does conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Megan. Is there anyone present who supports the bylaw who wishes to speak now? I don't see everyone on my screen, so I'm not sure if anyone is motioning to me. Dean Kleiber, is that you? Sorry, Dean, I didn't quite recognize you there. Good evening and welcome. We'd love to hear you.
Okay, yes, I support the project. I'm also an adjacent landowner. Megan has been very helpful to me in the past couple of weeks. My only concern, I wanted to make sure that the main entrance to Legacy Farms aligns with the eastbound right-of-way that continues on the other side that connects into my property there. And that's about all.
Okay, thank you, Dean. And Megan, you're aware of that. I assume you've been working with that with Dean. Thank you.
If I may speak,
Sure.
yeah, pardon me, through your worship. Yeah, so Dean did identify the road right away to us. It was registered January of this year. So there is a policy within the ASP that speaks to road and transportation aligning with our policies. So I do feel comfortable with the alignment on for the road going to Dean's property being covered there.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Is there anyone else? Sorry, is there anyone else present who would like to speak? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone present who opposes the bylaw who wishes to speak now? Not seeing any opposition. Is there anyone present deemed to be affected by the bylaw who wishes to speak? Dean?
Yes, as an adjacent landowner, I am affected, but I have no further comments.
Thank you. Anyone else deemed to be affected by the bylaw who wishes to speak at this time? Megan?
Through your worship, not myself, but the applicants are here and they do have a presentation to share.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Bruce. Welcome. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Worship. First of all, congratulations to Strathmore Council on your appointment of a new Chief Administrative Officer. And secondly, congratulations to Mr. Scoble on his recent naming to that position. Thank you, Your Worship, and members of Strathmore Town Council for your time this evening and for your consideration. Your Worship, when I last appeared before Council, I emphasized the historical significance of the Canadian Pacific Railway's irrigation and demonstration farm projects at Strathmore to the settlement and development of Strathmore, to southern Alberta, the prairies, and to the history of Western Canada. We present to Council the Legacy Farm Area Structure Plan that will facilitate the recognition of that history, as well as encourage new tourism-themed ventures that will greatly assist Strathmore and region in becoming a destination of choice for both domestic and international tourists. Your Worship and Council members, the Legacy Farm Area Structure Plan before you this evening involves significant input from area residents and professionals. It was created under the guidance of our project team leader, Mr. Michael Van Housen. Mr. Van Housen is an internationally noted author, lecturer, and authority on urban planning and design. And I now ask him to continue our presentation.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Your Worship, members of Council. Delighted to be here this evening to present the Legacy Farm project. I'd like to acknowledge that it takes a team to build a project, and I'm graced with a great team. Jonathan Schmidt, who's my planner, Hassan Karim. Bruce Klaber has been supportive all the way through the project as a key team member. Ghost Pine Environmental, Bunton Associates on transportation, and then two designers, Cal Shrigley and Scott Ramses, who helped us with the illustrations. Maybe most importantly, we had an incredible support group that we initiated at the beginning of the project to generate the program for this farm. And Bruce points out that this is really a community project, which is very, very important. We had 16 support members, including Tourism Alberta, Community Futures, the Chamber of Commerce, and a number of active participants from the Historic Society. And these gave us, like Bruce, an incredible repertoire or program to work with in terms of a menu. Our vision for Legacy Farm, as you heard from Megan, is really to develop an outstanding agriculture tourism destination and business hub at the same time. And this is to affect the Calgary region. It is envisioned as a dynamic mix of commercial, light agricultural, industrial business uses, and institutional research uses that will build on that agricultural theme. The concept itself, just to familiarize those who are not totally familiar with the project, it's southeast of the downtown, south of Highway 1, across the highway from the Ranch Supermarket Shopping Center, east of Spruce Industrial Park. And interesting enough, the farm core itself, as you see in the red circle I've pointed out with my pointer here, really is the destination for the development. It will be part of the first phase. And as you'll see, what we call the heart. And we'll complement this heart with surrounding uses to the east, what we're calling an RV resort to the east, and cabins and seasonal accommodation. To the north, we'll have business uses, and there we'll also have some institutional uses planned that could include local and provincial colleges doing research in agriculture as partners. West of the farm, we have Legacy Creek that connects down, as you'll see, as part of the Trans-Canada Trail Network. So hopefully people will, we call park once when they come to the destination, the farm, and they can take their bikes through the trail system or spend a day at the farm learning about their agricultural roots in Alberta. Really, really important. And to the south here, the purple portion will be ag business uses that will complement the agricultural theme. So these are some of the visuals. You saw this, Megan introduced it. The Central Boulevard, here you see my cursor here, coming off George Freeman Trail, will connect up a classic, what we call a classic farm entrance. Again, with tall trees to frame it. And at the apex of that will be a water tower and a classic farm destination, as I pointed out. Here, number 2 will be these seasonal cabins, again, inviting tourists to come, even if they don't have a trailer or a tent. They can participate in the cabins, and surrounding that, even the parking lots, we see them envisioned as planted as orchards, you know, with soft, you know, again, gravel paving, so the rainwater can seep in to recharge the ground. South is the resort, the RV resort with amenities. And then further south beyond this rainwater management area will be the business park. So this, as we zoom into the area, this is an exciting visual showing again the entrance to a turnaround, again, parking, these parking orchards surrounded by one, you see one here, we have a detailed central market, food creation and processing center, a market garden, potential demonstration farm, general store, and a boutique frontier hotel. The Ag Innovation Center to the north, as I described before, this is where, again, experimentation with food and growing, both inside and outside, will be part of hopefully bringing in a provincial or local college or university partner. And then, as I pointed out earlier, the Legacy Creek area will be enhanced as an environmental area. Backyard is, as Bruce introduced, this is the original historic barn that has been upgraded, and that will be a centerpiece as part of that area. And behind it will be a linked trail down to the Trans-Canada Trail. So an exciting center to come for a week, 2 weeks, or visit every weekend of the summer. Always something different to do. Now the Parks and Pathway Network eventually will hopefully be connected to downtown because it's just right across the highway. And then south down to the, the Trans-Canada Trail, which has a connection by the wastewater plant. And we'll create that continuity from the farm center down through, and also create links into the community itself. So people, as I mentioned before, can park once and walk for the rest of the day. Transportation, as you know, we need clear indications of transportations. This is, as I pointed out, the central access to the farm center, but we have other convenient routes into the area without overroading it, so to speak. And then to the south industrial area, we do have Slater Road to the west will also eventually be extended into the property as a secondary access point. And then finally, a local and collector road network within the property will strive to maximize access, but yet reduce roads where possible. So a simple framework providing a highly accessible site, but not too many roads. Finally, we're coming to the end here. Short presentation. The phasing starts at the north with the farm as, again, the focal point, the heart of the community. The RV resort as part of that first phase to support its viability. Phase 2 are the cabins and also some commercial south of the highway. Phase 3 then is that also extension of the business to the north. Phase 4, Phase 5, and Phase 6 is a sequential expansion of that ag business to the south. Thank you, Your Worship and Council. It's been a pleasure working with staff. I must compliment staff who've been helpful all the way along, enthusiastic about the idea, and most importantly, back to our wonderful owner, Bruce Klaber, and the support of the 16 support member groups who really nurtured that idea, that seed that eventually developed into, I think, a wonderful program for the town of Strathmore and the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for your presentation and your kind words. Is there anyone else present who is deemed to be affected by this bylaw who wishes to speak now? And Jonathan, if you could, thank you. Dean, we can turn to you again.
Yeah, I just thought I'd add that my adjacent 30 acres was also part of the original CPR farm that was there.
Thank you, Dean, for that addition. I'm not seeing anyone else who is affected who wishes to speak. Do councillors have any questions? And this would be primarily questions. Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Thank you very much. So this first question is, I think, for administration. It just has to do with the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan. Does this plan actually have jurisdiction over this ASP, or are they just kind of going by it for to be kind of good stewards?
Through your worship to Deputy Montgomery, it does. The South Saskatchewan Regional Plan is quite large. If you were interested, we could send you the entirety of the area that it kind of enforces on. But it does, like, Strathmore falls within its boundaries.
Oh, okay. I was reading that it doesn't kind of affect private land. So is this considered public land, or?
So the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, it has a couple of different sections within it. It has kind of like soft guidelines, and then it has the harder policies. The harder policies are for public land, so you'd see them more applicable in the parks and federal areas. The softer guidelines kind of speak to how they want to see municipalities develop and control development within their area. If that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm wondering how this ASP might be affected as well if Alberta Environment and Parks does not approve the removal of the wetland that is being looked at being moved.
Through your worship to Deputy Montgomery, I believe it would need to, they need to redo their stormwater management plan in order to basically go around the existing wetlands there if AEP doesn't approve the removal.
Okay, thank you. I saw, sorry, and if it's okay if I could ask another question. I saw a reference to there being 4 parcels of land included in this ASP, and it said one of them was town-owned land. Is that correct, that there's town-owned land within this ASP?
That would be the Legacy Creek, so that's part of the stormwater plan.
Okay.
Not their stormwater plan, but it's part of the town's stormwater management.
Okay. And I can open up to somebody else if they have. I just have one final question, but if anyone else wants to go, then by all means, please.
Does anyone else have a question that would like to go first? Seeing none, I'll go back to Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Thank you. So this just has to do with the requirements by the CMRB. I'm just wondering if the ASP is being restricted in any way or constricted by the CMRB requirements as they are now.
Megan?
Yeah, through your worship to Deputy Mayor. I don't think so. Bruce and his team may be able to speak to that, but I do think that the policies that they would have had to have followed through the CMRB, they augment the development. But that's they'd be able to speak to a little bit more if they wanted to answer that.
Michael, do you have anything further to add as far as how this fits in with CMRB and its regulations? And oh, Jonathan, I can go to you. Sorry, I saw your hand. Jonathan, good evening and welcome.
Thank you very much. Through your worship and council, just a quick answer there in that upon creation of the ASP and review of both the interim growth plan and the adopted but not yet adopted by the province growth plan, that we did not have to adjust our plan to align with that at all, that our original vision was intact upon review of those documents. So I don't know if Michael has anything else to add.
Thank you, Jonathan. Michael?
No, your worship, through your worship to council. Jonathan's my local policy expert. He worked on the regional plan, so he knows it inside out. And I was observing the development of the regional plan, and I believe we're in concordance with the regional plan. There's no problems.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, what I was kind of referring to is like, was the ASP built around, the requirements versus, it's like, or did, that's what I'm saying. So, but yeah, that's fine. If it sounds like they weren't really affected. So thank you very much for answering the questions I had.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Montgomery. Councillor Wiley?
I just want to say I'm very excited. And I'm just wondering, what's the ideal timeline here? Like, when would you like to see a shovel in the ground? I guess this was for Michael or Bruce.
I'll hand that over to Bruce, who's the owner and developer.
All right. Sure. All right. So I think all of us would like to see starting tomorrow. But anyway, due to COVID and the time it takes for approval and whatnot, we've got everything sort of on hold at this time. Although and one reason for that is that we've created the area structure plan to illustrate our commitment to the project. We would like to know that we have the town's approval for the project as well, so that when we sit down with interested parties, we can say to them, all right, we have the community support. Now, how do we fit you into this plan? And how do you help make it a success?
Thank you, Bruce. Councillor Wiley, does that help as far as your question?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're helping Bruce and Michael in the project as much as we can to show our support too, or at least my support.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Any other questions from councillors? Seeing none, are there any further speakers tonight? And Jonathan, I guess I'll turn to you and IT to see if anyone is calling in from home. Bryce, is there anyone on the line? Or Jonathan? No? Okay.
Thank you, worship. No, we do not.
Okay, thank you very much. We have no executive reports. We have no bylaws on this section. So now I'm looking for a motion to adjourn the public hearing from one of the councillors. Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Thank you. I will move that we close the public hearing.
Thank you. And if you could just specify it's at 6:29.
Oh, at 6:29. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've heard the motion to adjourn the public hearing. All in favor? And we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council.
Thank you, Mr. Kleiber and the presenters tonight. And thank you, Dean, for being with us in the public hearing portion.
Thank you.
I would like to reconvene the regular council meeting for February 16th, 2022, and we are starting at 6:30 p.m. At this point, I'm looking for a motion to, well, actually, I'll ask, are there any emergent items from any of the councilors tonight for this agenda? Seeing none.
Your worship,
Councillor
could I
Peterson?
please add a question to administration under the appropriate section?
Are you thinking from, would that
just
be
looking.
items? Councillor questions, oh, that's questions between councillors and council statements. Kara, maybe I could turn to you and just ask, or Jonathan, where it would specifically come in if Councillor Peterson wanted to ask a question of administration.
I guess it could come under administrative inquiries, your worship.
I don't believe we have any more in administrative inquiries.
I see it on the
Okay.
list.
So the bylaw, like we're still operating under the previous council procedure bylaw, your worship. And so, yes, it could be added under administrative inquiries.
Okay, thank you. And Kara, should we have some specification as to the nature of the question or
It's related to climate caucus, your worship.
related? Okay, thank you. Is this something, Kara, that we would need to vote on as far as adding it to the agenda?
So Councillor Peterson is asking to add it to the agenda. So when you make the motion, it would be as amended to include this item.
Okay. Okay. Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Thank you. So I would like to add a in-camera part. And that'll be section 16(1)(b). And do we need to remove the other one that we had on there?
I think that will, I haven't actually, that is farther on. I think there is something that's going to be deleted. It's
Okay, well, so yeah, so I guess then if I could also add the amendment of removing the 16.1, which is FOIP section 24(1), something or other.
24(1)(a).
Yep.
Okay, and again, I'll turn to Kara. As far as an in-camera item, we can just have that as a part of the amended agenda then? Okay.
That is correct, your worship.
So Councillor Deputy Mayor Montgomery, would you be prepared to make a full motion with the amendments?
Yeah, can I just say I move that agenda as amended?
Yeah.
Or do I have to specify those? Okay, yeah, I'll move the agenda as amended then, please.
Okay, let me just turn to Jonathan. I see his hand up.
Sorry, Your Worship and Council, I just want to clarify, we are adding the in-camera item for business development under FOIP section 16(1)(b), and then deleting 16.1 medical services advice from officials. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
And then adding also the administrative inquiry under 15.1.
Yeah, correct.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification, gentlemen. That was good. So councillors at home, you've heard the motion with the amendment. I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion to amend? And that motion is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. We have no presentations or recognitions tonight for item 3. We have no public comments under 4, no delegations. We have no consent agenda. So at this point, I'm at confirmation of minutes, looking at a motion to confirm the regular council meeting minutes. Councillor Wiley.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the council adopt the February 9th, 2022 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Wiley. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. We have no tabled items in item 8. Item 9, we have no items or reports from administration. Item 10, I don't believe there are any committee reports tonight. And item 11, there are no items directly related to council. So that brings us back to item 12, dealing with bylaws. 12.1 Legacy Farm Area Structure Plan, bylaw number 21-21. And Councillor Wiley.
I'm ready for the motion.
Thank you.
Now, Jonathan, I'm not sure if I have the most updated one here. Is this the one you emailed us just? Yeah, you just emailed just about 15 minutes before the meeting. Now,
That's
do
correct.
I need to read the whole thing, including the replacing map 3, ...
Please, yes,
Okay.
Your Worship.
So I move the council amend bylaw 2121 Legacy Farm Area Structure Plan by replacing map 3 existing infrastructure with map 3 existing infrastructure as shown in attachment 2, replacing map 5 development concept with map 5 development concept as shown in attachment 3, replacing map 10 sanitary servicing with map 10 sanitary servicing as shown in attachment 4, including appendix B CMRB maps as shown in attachment 6.
Thank you, Councillor Wiley. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor? And that motion is carried. And then we are looking for another motion. Councillor Wiley, you're on
I'm ready
fire.
to get this going. I move the council give second reading to bylaw 2121 being the Legacy Farm Area Structure Plan as amended.
Thank you for the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Do you want to go for the hat trick, Councillor Wiley?
Yeah, let's do it. I move that council direct administration to submit the interim regional evaluation framework application to the Calgary Metropolitan Regional Board.
Thank you for that motion. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is also carried. Thank you, councillors. And thank you to Mr. Kleiber and to Dean Kleiber for also being here. Thank you to your team, Michael, and I've lost the other person, but thank you very much for being here. And Bruce, again, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for your presentation tonight, and thank you for your energy and drive to bring this project forward to the town of Strathmore and to the area of Wheatland County.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thanks to all the support we've had from the staff at the town and to the other councillors as well.
Thank you. We wish you all a great evening. Take care.
And you too.
Thank you. And that brings us to 12.2 Regional Emergency Management Bylaw number 22-05 and Regional Emergency Management Agreement, which is found on page 133 of your agenda package. David Sturgeon, good evening, and again, welcome to our town of Strathmore as the new fire chief. We appreciate you having you here, and we look forward to hearing from you on this obviously very important bylaw and agreement.
Great, thank you, Your Worship. So, sorry, it's my first time presenting here. I'm not 100% sure of the protocol. Do I just run through the report with you?
Yeah, you know, you have your discretion as far as how you would like to do your report. You can present your report. Typically, then there'll be questions from councillors, and there may be some comments afterwards.
Sure.
But yeah, if you wouldn't mind going ahead with however much information, what kind of a report you feel comfortable with, and we'll listen and hear you out. Okay, so you'll see the request before you today for a decision on giving this new bylaw reading. So it'd be 2205, the Regional Emergency Management Bylaw. What this bylaw will do, will bring the Wheatland County
the town of Strathmore, the village of Hussar, the village of Rockyford, and the village of Standard, all together with a regional emergency response plan. And so it will form an agency that will be basically the governors of the plan, and then we'll form our response plan behind that. It will also repeal our current emergency management bylaw, which we're due on our own. So that's directly responsible solely by the town, and we have no other partners within that agreement. And it will, then we would enter into an agreement with all those parties on how the actual framework works. If there's any monies involved, how exactly those will get allocated, and who is responsible for the various tasks included. So one thing to know with that is each town, so the town of Strathmore and Wheatland County both hired a .25 emergency management coordinator. And what that person does is develops the plan for each zone. So for our zone, they develop our plans, and then for Wheatland County, they develop theirs, and then they work together basically to integrate those. So through that agreement, those two positions would work hand in hand. Although employed by different parties, they would work together to create the ultimate plan with all the appropriate documentation and training included in that. So that's kind of the high level reading of basically what we're asking for here tonight.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Chief, I should say. Sorry, I have to be a little more formal. Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions for Chief Sturgeon concerning the bylaw or the regional management agreement? Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Thank you. So I have I guess I'll do 3 questions first. So one question I have, so I noticed, there's five members to this this group, and so I guess what I want to do is I want to just make sure I'm understanding the framework properly, I guess, and how this is going to work. So there's 5 members, and so, but it seems like, and those 5 members make up the committee, I guess you could say. Is that correct? Okay, and it looks like, so Strathmore and Wheatland County are paying. They're like, we're splitting the cost evenly between the 2 of us. Is that correct? Okay. And one of the things I noticed was that, for instance, for like determining the budget for this, it says that it just needs the approval of 3 members to approve the budget, 3 members of that committee to approve the budget. So in theory, I'm thinking, like, in theory, we could have 3 non-paying members that are approving a budget that they won't even have to have any skin in the game for. And I'm wondering, like, well, one thing I'm wondering is, why are we giving non-paying members a vote on the committee? Maybe could you answer that first of all? Like, why are we giving non-paying members a vote?
So you're talking specifically about the agreement, so outside of the bylaw. So you're pertaining to the Wheatland Regional Emergency Management Partnership Agreement, is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so within that, so what was brought forward was to regionalize the program. Obviously, Strathmore and Wheatland County are the 2 major partners in this. We're the ones that have basically the most amount of work to do. We have the joint resources that we're building already through mutual aid programs that we already share. The villages work with Wheatland County for their side of it. So if they need additional resources, they have that direct contact with Wheatland County to be able to get those things. So the thought behind when we were putting this together was basically that Strathmore is working with Wheatland County, and then its partners trickle down from there. And so when it comes to the actual committee and the planning, the idea was that they would be there for representation, but when we actually structure this committee, it's going to be run by the Dems, and then the Strathmore and Wheatland County will basically be the main representatives of it. The other reason to have the other people in there was essentially for a backup. It was written originally, like the way you speak about it, that just Strathmore and Wheatland County had the ultimate say, but it was more just as a courtesy that in a rare event that we needed potentially somebody else, that once we have this framework together, everybody would be working together. So it really didn't matter who had what say, because one person's not going to go against the rest of the group. I think everybody's going to collectively make the best decision for everybody. And that's the idea about collaborating together. So it was to break down as many barriers as possible to get people to participate. If we put too many barriers up at the beginning and people get really shy about or feel that they don't have a say in any way, and they feel really shy about sharing and getting the information out. And the idea was to be inclusive with all parties so that, they will effectively have, and they do, because I've met with all parties, have people, although they're small organizations in the villages, they have some very smart people that do some great things, and we could really draw from those resources when we need them, like including DEMs and deputy DEMs and things like that. So I think it's a valuable resource to have them included. And we went through this plan with all parties. So myself and my team and Wheatland County originally went through it, and then we brought it to the villages to see how they felt about it. And collectively, we thought this was the best route. Although this is the way presented, it could be changed. Should council wish, we could present something new, but that was the thought behind it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, like as always, I'm always concerned about, the potential budget implications of any of these things. And, I presume that, when this was kind of assessed, that it was, it was found that that it's cheaper to kind of do this model rather than kind of a go it alone for Strathmore. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So right now we're responsible for everything. We still would be responsible for everything within our boundaries. It just gives us way more resources at our disposal at essentially no cost off the beginning. If we're just using local resources within Wheatland County or the villages, we can collaborate together and come up with things like hazard assessments and how are we going to respond to things? What type of resources do we need? We can figure that all out together without having to bring in external consultants or anything like that. So I think it cuts down more of that administrative cost. Your response cost is always going to be your response cost, depending on the nature of the incident and the severity. But this side just gives us so many more minds to draw from it and internal resources. I think in the end it will be cheaper. It's hard to say right now, but we don't spend a huge amount of money on emergency management. I think there's areas where we do need to probably be a little more robust and be ready for the types of events that could potentially happen. But I think a lot of that can be done internally, and just by adding more people, you're going to get more thoughts and more workforce to be able to work on those things. So I think in the end, it would actually equate to savings.
Okay, I'm certainly big on collaborating, especially with our neighbors and regional partners. So I think it's great that we're doing that. Thanks for answering those questions. I'll open it up to the rest of council, and I do have other questions, but I'll wait. Thank you very much.
Mayor, I'll turn now to Councillor Peterson, followed by Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is also related to Appendix B, and primarily on page 156. Section 38, and that relates to the cost, and that was my major concern as well. And so I understand that we're both employing a 0.25, but I saw other places throughout in terms of potential for cost in this, everything from preparedness to insurance and indemnity. And I'm just wondering how as a council and oversight, as Councillor Montgomery or Deputy Mayor Montgomery referenced, how will we be able to determine a budget? And when I look in Appendix B in this document, it doesn't really, it tells me what the the funding model is just simply 50%. And so I'm troubled by that because it's an unknown at a time of quite at a time when our council is coming under quite serious pressure in terms of costs generally. And I don't know if in 38 could have a subsection A, possibly that spoke to this, but I'm willing to hear it out, you know, and but it did cause me unease, Your Worship.
Thank you. Chief Sturgeon, do you have a response as far as that portion of the appendix and the costs?
Sure. So through your worship to Councillor Peterson or all council. So the idea behind cost is, and the thought behind why we went this route is that our costs are already the costs that we're incurring to do this service. So regardless if we're in this program or not in this program, these costs will still be borne by us and it will still be the same amount of cost. We're not essentially pooling our resources to pay for things in the county or in the villages. All this is saying is that we're gonna collaborate together. What do we need respectively on each party to be able to have our programs the way that they need to be? And then at the end of the day, what is that number? So if it's $100,000 now, it's essentially going to be $100,000 then. We still have to do the same things for the legislation. It's just that we're going to work together and we have a collaborative method of actually getting the work done. So Wheatland County is still going to have to pay their share of their costs. And the idea why the villages weren't included is, again, back to that same comment before, is that essentially the villages go to Wheatland County for what they need. So Wheatland County is essentially the big brothers to those villages. And so the thought was, if the town of Strathmore and Wheatland County works together, if the villages need anything, they're going to go to the county directly, and it's not going to come through this as a third party. And so we talked a lot about that, and that's where we came to at the end of this. We've also ran this by obviously our senior leadership team, and then as well as Wheatland County senior leadership team, and we talked about kind of those various things, and we all kind of came up with the same thought process on that. So I can understand where, you know, it could be one of those things where it, you know, you could think maybe it could get out of control, but I think just by the checks and balances we have with the people that involved, like the DEMS, the Directors of Emergency Management from both agencies, are going to be the ones overseeing these meetings. They're going to be the ones proposing these things to the councillors and to the politicians, that essentially they're going to come up like with those costs, and then you guys are going to decide, is that right for us? And at that time, if you say, I don't think that's right, you know, I think we should talk about this or go back to the drawing board, then there's plenty of opportunity to do that.
So supplementary, Your Worship, if I may.
Yes.
So I want to make it really clear from my perspective that the plan in and of itself, I think, is great. When we spoke about this in 2018, the transitional solutions, we had a pretty robust conversation about potential costs and what that might look like. It was pre-COVID, and so my unease comes from the fact that there's, you know, if there was a statement in this bylaw that said no additional costs to municipalities will be incurred, and it was simply a redeployment of costs, I would be absolutely fine in moving forward. But it's not there. And so I find that I do have unease with this. If that statement was there, and I believe you, Chief, you know, that we are already deploying these resources, but I just want to see it there, because, you know, when we started out on our pandemic journey, you know, we had very different ideas about what that was going to cost and what the actuality was. And, you know, so if there is some way that we could mitigate potential for impact on our future budget, I'd be very interested to hear it. Thank you, Your Worship.
Chief Sturgeon or Mark Kutzlaff, any comments as far as an amendment that would specifically deal with Councillor Peterson's concern? And then I guess, would that come forward in an amendment to the bylaw? That would be Ledge Services.
Your
Mark?
worship, and I think maybe Ledge Services can clarify this with us, is hearing those comments from Councillor Peterson, we can look to amend the bylaw and the agreement. And if that's council's wishes, and then if you choose to give it first reading tonight, and then we can come back with amendments for second and third readings.
So Kara, if we go to first reading and then at second reading, we would then stop, would we not, with the discussion there? At some point, it has to be stopped in the process, correct?
So
If
what
we're going to
council
go
could
through-
do, oh, sorry, your worship.
No,
So
go
what
ahead.
council could do is give it first reading, as Mr. Pretzlaff has indicated, but alternatively, what council also could do is give it first and second reading as amended, and then specify the amendments or that you would like to see. But it's ultimately up to council in terms of how you'd like to proceed.
Okay, as far as procedure then, if I could turn to Chief Sturgeon and Mark, is this a time sensitive issue, or is there an opportunity to have this put off to the March 2nd meeting and more time can be spent to possibly suggest amendments?
So to your worship, to council. So I think we're talking about two different things. So Councillor Peterson's talking about Schedule B in the Wheatland Regional Emergency Management Agreement. So that's separate from the bylaw. The bylaw doesn't dictate the costs, it would be the agreement. So we could still go ahead with the bylaw should you wish, and then we could alter the agreement, then bring the agreement back to you.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but that's the one that may have to be put off till the 2nd, or possible amendments come forward on that very last one that you just mentioned. Thank you for that too. Councillor Peterson, did you have anything coming out of that?
Thank you, Worship. I do see that the agreement is definitely separate from the bylaw, but I think the bylaw has to speak to the agreement. And so I would defer to administration on best way forward and to the rest of my council. But I find that because the bylaw will supersede the agreement, or it'll drive the agreement. That's my concern. So I'd be happy to do either thing that Kara referenced tonight, but I would really like to hear the wisdom of administration. Your work.
Okay, I'll turn now to CAO Scoble.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe my understanding is I've been told that the bylaw does reference the agreement. Really, council should give first reading to any bylaw. You should never turn down first reading, because then nothing happens and nothing goes forward, right? So it would be more appropriate to make the amendments after the first reading, whether that's at second reading or what have you.
Okay, thank you for that. So as far as proceeding on tonight, as like what we're discussing, I guess I should see, Councillor Peterson, can you put into words what an amendment might be that we might suggest as we put this off after first reading?
Your Worship, both the chief and Director Pretzlaff have much greater capacity than I do to this. So I am prepared to move first reading after other councillors have had their opportunity to answer questions, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. I'll go now to Councillor Langmaid and then back to Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I think this question has actually possibly already been answered, but I just want to make sure I understand. I see in our agenda package that this was recommended for all 3 readings this evening. And I just want to clarify, are there any urgent reasons that we would need to fully pass this bylaw tonight? Are we out of compliance with a piece of legislation? Is there any reason why us not giving all 3 readings tonight would have a negative impact?
Mark, I'll turn to you.
Through Your Worship, no, there's no urgency towards this. We're more than willing to bring this back with the amendments as requested by council, and we could present this in early March or by mid-March for sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. I'll turn to Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Councillor Peterson. You spoke a lot more eloquently about my concerns about the budget of this. So I have a couple of notes about the actual bylaw itself, and then I have a couple of notes about the agreement as well, if I could. So in section 8.1 of the bylaw, it makes a reference to a municipal committee comprised of the mayor or any two councillors. Is that correct? It's supposed to be the mayor or any two councillors, or is it the mayor and any two councillors?
Sorry, through the worship to Councillor Montgomery. So this was in this section specifically talks about the authorities and powers. So this is when declaring a state of local emergency. And so it is the mayor or any two councillors. So the mayor has the authority to declare a state of local emergency, or if the mayor is not available, then any two councillors could do the same thing. One thing to note with that is that if it is declared by either the mayor or the councillors, it still has to go to the Minister of Public Safety to be essentially adopted. So you can't just declare a sole and then you're good to go. It has to go to the province and they have to basically ratify it, and then you're on your way from there.
Okay, thank you very much. And then under section 9.6, sorry. Oh, 9.6C. It just says, this is just like a typographical thing. It just says Lieutenant Governor and Council makes and order. I think it's supposed to be an order probably.
Okay.
And then for the actual agreement itself, so I have a question, like with regards to like the COVID, when we declared a state of local emergency for COVID, that was obviously kind of affecting the region. Would Strathmore's COVID response have been handled by the regional group, or would it have still been handled strictly in a Strathmore way?
Sure. So through the worship to Councillor Montgomery, or Mark, do you want to go ahead? Or
Your worship, I think maybe Chief Sturgeon can echo it, but I believe our state of emergency was for town of Strathmore. It did not extend past our boundaries in reality. I don't recall Wheatland County issuing a sole. So we, in this instance, obviously it would have just impacted our resources and things like that.
Yeah, so through your worship to Councillor Montgomery, just to echo that or clarify. So if that happened in this case after this bylaw is passed, we still have the autonomy to do what we need to do within the town of Strathmore. It doesn't rely on the group to do anything that we need to do. So if they decide that, for instance, they did not want a state of local emergency, but we decided we did for COVID, we could still go ahead and do that and do everything that we did. It makes no difference.
Okay, thank you. And does one, sorry, this kind of goes back, does 1F need to be completed? Like it's in my package, it's highlighted and there's a blank part to it.
Sorry, I'm not 100% sure what you're referring to.
Section 1F of the agreement. Under the introduction, just the last, it says the minister responsible for the act is issued ministerial.
Page 143 of our package there. Yes, it would correspond with, sorry, go ahead, David.
Yeah, so through your worship, Councillor Montgomery. So once this all gets passed, if the bylaw passes and the agreement passes, it has to be sent to the minister, and the minister has to give us a ministerial order for these powers to be effective. So we still have to do that step. Our AEMA or Alberta Emergency Management Agency rep is aware of that, and so we're just waiting on the logistics here. Once that's completed, they would issue that ministerial order, and then we would be 100% compliant basically with legislation from there.
Okay, great, thank you. In section 30, it references the committee, but it's not capitalized. Is that actually referring to the Regional Emergency Advisory Committee, or is that a different committee?
It should have been capitalized, yeah.
So I noticed that it mentions that if let's say local authorities are unable to declare a SOL, that a non-local member of the committee can declare a SOL. I'm wondering how would a non-local person determine if it's an emergency that is something we want to declare a SOL for or not?
Sure. So through your worship to Councillor Montgomery, that's a great question. Usually what happens, and even in the case, I'm sure Mayor Fuel or CAO Scoville could attest to this, but in the event of an emergency, you know, when it comes time to actually do these things, so for instance, if I'm going to Mayor Fuel and asking for him to do this, he's going to go on the advisement of the DEM and the deputy DEM and whoever that working group is in the ECC that's dealing with the incident. They're going to make recommendations, and it's more than just a phone call. Hey, can you just do this for me? You actually have to go through what exactly is happening. Why do we need the SOL? What are we actually going to do once we have the SOL? And what powers are we going to actually enact? And then go from there. And that includes regular briefing updates, and those happen every single day, sometimes multiple times per day, depending on the incident.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And I see Councillor Langmaid has a question, so I'll defer to her in this.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you. I'm just looking through, while I was looking through the Wheatland Regional Emergency Response Management Plan, I see that it's marked as final draft, but there's still some sections that seem to be missing with questions in them, like say on page 188 of 286, there's a question about what is the procedure followed by the region for contacting PESS. And then there's a few plans further on in the document that say, you know, basically placeholder. Is this plan in its final edit, or is there still more work to be done on this plan before we kind of have a fulsome document here?
Sure. So through your worship to Councillor Langmaid. So that plan is essentially just the all-encompassing draft, like it says. So we, right now, the town of Strathmore has their plan, Wheatland County has their plan, and the villages and so on and so forth. So once all this, the bylaw goes through, the agreement goes through, the committees are struck and we meet, then that's when our coordinators I spoke about earlier, the 0.25 coordinators, will actually start, once this bylaw is passed, they can actually start working on that plan. So they'll be merging the plans into one plan, as well as there's going to be things like in Wheatland County, they have rail, so they're going to have rail response as a appendices of a hazard that we don't have to deal with rail, but we're still going to want to know in the plan in the event that, you know, we have to provide them with resources that we know what the plan is to deal with those things. So it really is just a shell of a document, and it will be filled out, but procedurally, this has to go through first. If this isn't going to go through, then we wouldn't want to spend time on a mutual plan that essentially isn't worth anything. So
Understood. Thank you for clarifying that. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing anything here, and I'm glad to hear I'm not. I think that's actually my only question for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. If I could turn to Kara just for a quick question, or Jonathan, just making up names. Procedurally, if we would give first reading, and then if council has amendments, would it be best to share those between now and the time of the next meeting?
My suggestion would be if there's ones that council can agree on tonight, that we actually can take a pause. We could craft a resolution for council to pass, just so that we're clear as administration moving forward on the specific amendments that council would like to see. So when we come back for, if there's amendments specifically to the bylaw, or if there's amendments specifically to the agreement, that we're clear on what it is that council would like to see moving forward.
Okay, I guess my worry is it's such a big document that it could take a while to finally get our heads around what could be some amendments for tonight, as opposed to taking some time and submitting those. I think Deputy Mayor, did you want to weigh in on that part of it? I saw your hand go up quickly.
Yes, please. For me, I would really appreciate just a bit more information about like what the costs are expected to be. And then at that point, I don't really have any amendments to offer, to be honest. I would just like to know more about the costs and what the possible projected costs would be under different scenarios and whatever. So I just need more information, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peterson, Councillor Wiley, did you have I think, was yours answered or addressed?
No, I want the other councillors to go first.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peterson, then Councillor Langmaid, and then back to Councillor Wiley.
Your worship, the only thing that, I would speak to more to intent than to wording would be that that there would be an indication and agreement between the bylaw and the actual plan, in that costs incurred over and above existing resources and an amount that's reasonable, would be brought back to respective councils for approval prior to moving forward. That would be my, my idea. But I, like I said, I also clearly hear what Chief is saying. He has much greater insight and understanding into this than we do. He understands the intent.
Yeah, good, very good point. And I saw a thumbs up from Councillor Wiley too. Is council comfortable with what you've seen in front of you, and we're just looking for an amendment along the lines of what Councillor Peterson just stated? Is that where are we pretty close? We just want something as far as some certainty as far as funding or the costs of it. Okay. So keep that in your mind, Councillor Peterson, as far as your wordsmithing on a potential amendment. I'll go to Councillor Langmaid, and then, Fire Chief Sturgeon, did you have something to add right there?
Sure,
Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to clarify on costs, so just so we're talking about the same thing, is the costs incurred for the planning and development of the agency and the ongoing yearly training, not the response, because the response costs are response costs, right? Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, I have Councillor Langmaid and then Councillor Wiley.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just, I wanted to maybe test the waters on the idea that, as CAO Scoble mentioned, it is good practice to always give first reading so that we can move a document in a bylaw further along. I'm wondering if there would be value in following first reading, recommending moving it to the next meeting of the Committee of the Whole, where we can have, given the scope and breadth of the two documents we have to look through, and the importance of both of them, it would give councillors a couple of more weeks to digest the material in front of us, and then be able to have a wholesome discussion about it coming out, at an upcoming Committee of the Whole meeting.
It's a point of clarification, Your Worship.
Councillor Peterson.
I didn't quite hear you, Councillor Langmaid. Are you saying that we should or we shouldn't pass first reading tonight? And the reason I ask is that if we ask first reading, it gives administration opportunity to go in and bring us back some more fulsome advice around this. If we don't pass it, then we're stymied.
He's recommending first reading.
Yeah, so to clarify, yes, Councillor Peterson, what I was recommending is giving first reading tonight, and following first reading, should it pass, that we refer the document to the next Committee of the Whole meeting in March, so that we can have a fulsome discussion on it and review the amendments and make sure we have our head wrapped around this, because this is a very important document for us and for all the communities involved. And I think it's deserving of our full focus and attention.
Thank you. CAO Scoble, if I can quickly turn to you, it would make sense that this would go to a committee of the whole meeting than if we're going to refer it to another meeting. That's one where you would have a lot more information shared and questions answered or questions posed.
Yes, I would agree with that. It sounds like it's what I'm hearing tonight is council members are looking for a little bit more opportunity for discussion and question and dialogue on this. So committee of the whole would be appropriate.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So Councillor Peterson, if you're wordsmithing in your mind, we would, well, either you or Councillor Langmaid, somebody would have a motion then to refer it to the March 9th committee of the whole meeting.
Your worship, would you entertain us moving the bylaw first, moving first reading, or motioning first reading?
I would think so, but I think at this time we have maybe a couple of more questions from councillors, but if you can hang on to that, and Councillor Langmaid, I believe your ideas mentioned committee of the whole, which is March 9th, if you can keep that one in your mind right now when we come to motions. Councillor Wiley and then Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Thank you, Chief, for your answers tonight. A lot of clarity being brought to this. Thank you, fellow councillors. Like, just incredible questions tonight. Like, I'm just very impressed. Everything I was thinking of asking has been covered. Honestly, my hand was up. Maybe I'm jumping the gun here. I'm prepared to make the motion for the first reading, and then someone can follow up. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Wiley. If I can just quickly come back to you, Deputy Mayor Montgomery might have a question. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, and just for Councillor Wiley, so once we move first reading, we can't like discuss or debate it. That's why it's probably better to just kind of get these out of the way now. So on page 22 of the plan document, which is page 186 of our agenda, just under mandatory evacuation order, it references voluntary evacuation under there. I think that probably should be mandatory instead of voluntary. And the last one I have is page 33 of the document, which is page 197. It says, under operational reviews, it just says that the DEM will ensure that an operational review workshop is held after all ECC activations, and the review will ideally be held within 1 week of the ECC activation. So does that mean that like during the actual emergency itself, they'll be reviewing doing an operational review?
So through your worship to Councillor Montgomery. So what that's referencing is, in other language, it's called an after action review. And what that is it doesn't happen during the event. It may start happening as you wind down. You may assign somebody to start gathering the information. But essentially what you're doing is going through your response and identifying areas of weakness or potential areas that maybe you fell a bit short or could have done better, to bring in some areas that maybe you did really well, and you just want to let everybody know that, hey, this side was really good, but we need to work on things over here. And that's all that's referencing, is that an after action review gets done and then should be brought forward to the committee to make changes to the plan, should it get to that level, or if it's just within an operational document that the emergency management coordinators, would update the plan accordingly.
Okay, and yeah, this is just kind of like my own knowledge, I guess. So, and it says like it'll ideally be held within 1 week of the ECC activation. Like, is that anticipating like a kind of a 1 or 2 day emergency then? Because after a week of the ECC being activated, you would still be under emergency. Or, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, through your worship to Councillor Montgomery, I think the wording, I'll check the wording on that, but it it should indicate within like 1 week of the event essentially being over. So once that event's concluded, then you want to make sure that you meet with the group quite quickly, because that information that you had could be lost. So you want to make sure that you're capturing all the appropriate information from all parties, and then you create your document and then go from there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, yeah, like, the document's great. Like, it's very thorough, and yeah, it's obviously well planned out. So thank you very much. And thanks for answering my questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Wiley, are you ready?
Sure. I'll throw a question out first, then if it's advisable, we do them first. So
Sure.
I've heard a couple of checks and balances that are included in this document. I just want to understand correctly. Another one of the checks and balances is that after 1 week, the resolution is brought before council for them to, for the SOL to continue. Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Wiley. So that's correct. There's a 7-day contingent period that you can have a SOL out there. After that period, you have to get it renewed. So that would be, we'd have to submit the same document. So, or sorry, a new document with that is basically extending that SOL. It would have to be signed by the mayor or the 2 councillors, or if they were unavailable, then 2 members of the committee. And then you have to basically state your case over again to the minister that, we're not done with this event and we need to renew it. And that's to stop people from just leaving them open and being able to just draw on the powers for no reason. So it gives you enough time that you can do a response. And you have lots of operational periods that you'll go through, and you'll learn what needs to be done next. And by that time, you should have a better understanding of what does that week look ahead before we have to renew. And in a lot of cases, so I come from British Columbia that has forest fires everywhere. So I spent like 40 some days straight in the ECC last year. And basically what that does is we try to pull those SOLs off as soon as possible, because they are disruptive to lives. So we understand that. And the idea is that by having to do it every 7 days, it makes you actually sit down and think, do you actually need to have the SOL, or can we just do a few things that maybe may work and we could take it off, right? So that's where that comes in. That's kind of another check and balance.
Yeah, I really am satisfied with that answer. I appreciate anything that puts a check and a balance on government power or potential overreach. So clearly this document has a lot of thought, deliberation, and resourcefulness put into it. So yeah, I'm prepared to the council give the first reading. Is that all right with council?
I think so. Yep, everybody seems to be in agreement. So yes.
Okay. I move that council give first reading to bylaw 2205, being the Regional Emergency Management Bylaw.
Thank you. And I'll call the question. All in favor? And Councillor Langmaid?
I move that council refer bylaw number 22-05, being the Regional Emergency Management Bylaw, to the next committee of the whole meeting on March 9th, 2022.
Thank you for that motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. So we'll come back to this issue on March 9th. It'll give you time to, ready for this, Deputy Mayor Montgomery? It'll give you time to noodle what's going on. All right, we move on. There is no urgent business. We have questions between councillors and council statements. Nothing there. And item 15, administrative inquiries. I believe this was where, Kara, we were going to put Councillor Peterson's question. Okay, Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. You're always very good at putting me in my place. Your Worship, this council has increasingly embraced initiatives related to climate issues and climate access, and have been actively seeking the low-hanging fruit in that area. And a program that has just recently come to my attention, although it's been around for a bit, the Clean Energy Improvement Program, which secures funding through the FCM program, which allows residents to fund home improvements and pay off the allowable sum through property taxes So my question is to administration, your worship, if they have any information around this program, or if they could enlighten us some way. Thank you, your worship.
Thank you. CAO Scoble.
Thank you, through the chair. So Councillor Peterson's correct. It's a program that's been around for, I think, just over a year now when it was introduced. Some municipalities in the province have adopted it. The short of it is, council would have to create a bylaw, and council would have to have some financing in place, whether we took out a financing to do that, or we have money on hand. We'd have to resolve that. But basically the way it works is a resident can do these type of retrofits or upgrades to their property, and the municipality covers it, and then it's paid back. The principal and interest is basically paid back through adding on to the taxes in future years. So there is opportunity to do it. Council would have to, like I said, the two main things is council would have to establish a bylaw, and then we may have to borrow some money to, as kind of a separate account, so to speak, for those upgrades to add back against the tax roll. A little bit of work would be required by administration in the finance area to set this all up initially, and then as the program runs, there would have to be some staff time put to administering it. But it's certainly something that's been adopted by a number of municipalities in Alberta in about the past year or so.
Supplementary, your worship, do you think that this is something that we could bring to our strategic planning initiatives to talk about?
Through the chair, yes. I think it. I don't want to steer or prejudice council's discussion on your strat plan. It's your strat plan, and you decide what's in your strat plan. But certainly, environment and climate resiliency and energy transformation, those type of things would certainly be topics that council could talk about including in its plan, if that's something you wish to do as a whole.
That's all I have, your worship. Thank you very much for entertaining this. I learned about this Sioux work on the climate caucus. That's a volunteer role that I have, and I'm really happy to say that Councillor Langmaid is going to work on the climate caucus as well. So I'm really grateful, and thank you to administration, your worship.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson, and thank you, administration. At this time, I am looking for a motion to go in camera.
I will so move to go in camera, your worship.
I have Councillor Wegener. And if you could also state the time, Councillor Wegener.
I move that council go in camera to discuss items related to section 16(1)(b) and 17(4)(g)(2) of the Freedom of Information and Privacy Act at 7:28 p.m.
Thank you for that motion. All in favor? And we are going in camera.